like 2 more minutes, because we're very punctual here, starting at 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock. That's how punctual we are.
Central time.
As people gather around the internet and in person,
That's your screen saver.
yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Very sophisticated here, right? Did everybody get some tea or a cookie or some juice? It's all there, including maple cookies. It's not really maple syrup, I think, 100%, but it's okay. Okay, you ready, Emily? So welcome everyone here at the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry in Storrs, Connecticut, and those of you who are joining us online for this Spring 2025 Puppet Forum series event, Puppetry and Photography, with our esteemed guest, Richard Termine. And we're really excited that Richard's here to talk about his work as an amazing puppet photographer. My name is John Bell, and I'm the director of the Ballard Institute. I'm joined by Emily Wicks over here, manning the camera and watching the video and texting and watching TikTok. No. Manager of Operations and Collections here at the Ballard Institute. Also, Sol Ramirez, a Puppet Arts undergraduate student and our undergraduate wearing fellow. At the front desk, Kush Patel, our museum assistant. She's a graduate student in the business analytics and project management, which is quite impressive. And the esteemed guests here, colleagues and friends, and people we don't even know. So we wanted to ask you to sign on this sign-up sheet, if you don't mind, for this event. We appreciate that. And we wanted to mention, for those of you in the room with us, that the exits are behind you and to your left, where the exit sign is. But actually, since the bookstore is closed, you should exit the way you came in. If we go into the bookstore area, an alarm goes off and then we all get arrested. No, that doesn't happen. And the bathrooms are out here behind and to your left, very close by. We wanted to mention a few upcoming Ballard Institute and Yukon Puppet Arts events. For example, the Friday after next, April 11th at 8 p.m. in the Harriet Jorgensen Theater, we will present the Yukon 2025 Spring Puppet Slam. There's flyers at the front desk with Tao Bennett and Charlotte Lily Gaspard from New York City performing, Turi Cohen and John Bell from Great Small Works, an amazing array of talented Yukon Puppet Arts students. Waldron's Studio 88 from Willimantic will be back as our house band, and this will be the occasion of the 5th or 6th, maybe, coveted annual Bimpy Awards. Maybe we'll figure out if it's the 5th or 6th version by the time it comes. Bimpy Awards for Excellence in Puppet Slam Performance in Northeastern Connecticut. On Saturday, April 12th, the day after, at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., here at the Ballard Institute, the Spring Puppet Performance Series will present Storybound by Dusty and Doc, who are also from New York, And then on Wednesday, April 23rd at 7 p.m., our final puppet forum of the semester will be a special event, a forum, well actually a performance first, and then a forum discussion with Jan Hazard-Bazant, the renowned puppeteer, director, graphic designer, and comic book artist from Prague in the Czech Republic, who's here as a Fulbright scholar. He'll perform his shadow puppet production, Erben Vlasy, based on folk tales of a 19th century Czech writer. And Hazard is part of the Hura collective in Prague. On Saturday, April 25th, the last performance of our production of our spring puppet performance series will be John McDonough's Pumpernickel puppet production of Peter Rabbit. John McDonough from Worcester, Massachusetts, who we always like to see. So, I didn't print out your biography, but Richard Termine is a graduate of the Yukon Puppet Arts Program, graduate program, and we'll talk about your career. I know, Richard, we used to live close by to each other in Park Slope in the 1990s. We both had, Richard and his husband Roger had a son, and Trudy and I had a son about the same age who sometimes play together. But of course, we know Richard as a photographer who shows up at theater events, and especially puppet theater events. And if he shows up to take pictures of your production, you know that's a really good thing. That's a really cool thing. It's like, oh yeah, Richard Termine is taking pictures of our show. Excuse me. So we're really happy that Richard's here. He is the progenitor of our current exhibition, American Puppet Theater Today, the photography of Richard Termine, which if you're here in person, you will have seen on the way in. We hope you'll really peruse on the way out. Over 140 photographs from Richard's oeuvre, and it's produced by Cheryl Henson and the Jim Henson Foundation. The show's been touring around the world, and we're really excited that it's here at the Ballard Institute through the middle of May. I forget when exactly. May 11th.
Yeah. And we should give a special shout out to Cheryl Henson and to her staff, Amanda Card and Hannah Heitman, for all that they have done in terms of this tour of this exhibit from its initial 5 years ago. It wouldn't be happening without the Henson Foundation, Cheryl Henson.
Exactly.
And thank you here for hosting us. This is hosting it.
Oh, we love hosting it, and we added, our contribution is in part specific puppets that are featured in the photograph. So it's really exciting exhibit. Please come and see it. And part of the interest of this exhibit, when I look at it, is the way that you capture the nature, the essence, one might say, of puppetry in various photographs. And I look at the photograph, especially of shows that I know, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, because sort of ineffable quality of your photographs is the way that they capture movement. Part of a challenge of a puppet museum is like, you have puppets, but they're not moving. They're, dead. So like a puppet museum is kind of or an exhibition is a contradiction in terms. They should be moving. So we try to suggest that. And your photographs are still photographs, and yet they capture movement in puppetry. So I think that's a really exciting aspect of your work. Richard works for a number of different publications, notably the New York Times. You just mentioned you have to go back to Brooklyn to photograph the Berliner Ensemble, who are doing the Threepenny Opera at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. You work with BAM, and also the New York Times, and many other publications. And we're really happy that you are here. So, welcome, Richard Termine.
I am very happy to be here. This is like coming home to me. This was really studying here, being here as both an undergraduate and a graduate student is the foundation of my entire career, my entire life. It's my second home. I'm a Connecticut native, and so it's very special to bring this exhibit here, to be here tonight. This is a landmark for me, in the best sense of the word.
And you've been here, actually you were here yesterday. Did you arrive the day before?
Yeah.
Because you have family in Middletown nearby.
Right.
But you spent yesterday photographing puppet arts student work. And
Right.
we wanted to start, I think, with a short video that Matt Sorensen filmed, I believe, that documents that. And then we're going to see the actual photos you took of current
Right.
puppet art students' work, talk about that, what makes a good photograph, what makes a good photograph of puppetry, and then we'll talk more about puppet photography in general, your own backstory, and then we'll have questions and answers from the audience, answers from Richard. So,
and I would just preface this that yesterday was more of a rehearsal photo call, so that we had this immediate exchange in terms of what they were presenting to me, what they were showing, and then we were doing setups for the majority of the time. There were selected moments that we were working together, that I was able to communicate with the artists, and we were able to create these various scenes from their shows. The evening was more of a run-through, and then they would do the scene again, and we stopped a few times at selected moments. So there was a real exchange between me as a photographer and the artists that were presenting and creating. I would say that 99% of the time, when I'm on assignment, I am shooting a performance or a rehearsal that is in front of me, and I have no contact, verbal contact, or control over what is in front of me. I am shooting throughout and very steadily in the process of trying to capture the performance. So what you're going to see in the video is a real exchange and a more of a photo call situation.
Okay, I'm going to bring this up here. I'm going to enter full screen. Thank you, Sel, for turning off the lights. Inshallah, this will all work.
Let me get this I'll get this picture of this around front. Is this good? Okay. And heads down. Here goes. Okay. Beautiful. Okay, that's great. Very good.
And I put a telephoto lens there on a tripod.
Put the larger character in the center. Okay, sure. Is that cool? And this one on the other side? And that one on that side. Okay, sure. On the right side. Let's try that. And then take an animated pose. Very nice. Okay. Now can you bring the two women characters a little closer? Oh, yes. Oh, that's it, right there. There you go. Here we go again. Beautiful.
Now, just for the sake of a photo, I would like you to look at the puppets there so that I see your face. Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And here I'm using a wider angled camera,
Right up here.
much closer to the action.
That's good right there. Take the scissors down just a hair. That's it, right there. Maybe up a little. Just like that's it, right there. So we need the little puppet to catch the light a little more. Get her down stage just to catch. There you go. Perfect. That's it, right there. Beautiful. That is beautiful. You feel that? Bear with me.
I've got a knife, but I think the strongest shadows are probably the chainsaw.
hands are up, creating the shadow screen.
And then I've got a cat.
Beautiful. I love your shadows. Excellent. Well, why don't we, just do a series of you with the shadows?
Okay, great.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna leave the door open too for some, right there, is that all right?
Yeah.
Now, does she ever, on the table, does she ever react, does she ever take her hands up?
Not at this point.
Well, with a blade coming at you, maybe, yeah. Okay, that's good, that's good. Flatten your hands out more perpendicular to the, yeah, and more frightened. Yeah, is that good? Okay, go ahead, let's do it again. Maybe you could open your mouth on the table as well. Ah! Ah! Okay, I think that's good. Okay, next. You want to try on the table, turning that way and opening the mouth so I see some reaction.
Sure.
You try that. Let's do that with the cat. So you're, yeah, maybe your other hand is up in the air. The other, no, the upstage, take it closer to the screen. And you turned out and you're open mouth. And, okay, let's try that. Just, is that cool? Oh. So all of these need to be cropped.
Sure.
Okay, they need to be centered.
Yeah.
I just not looking at it.
So consulting with the artist is really important, and having a digital camera to be able to share,
Anything you want to change.
such a
you can
luxury
do
with that.
Yeah, I love her reaction. Could we,
See with the rat, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's.
we just get a reaction with the rat?
Yeah,
That'd be
definitely.
great.
Let's see what's the other. So this is the knife, the blade.
Uh-huh.
And I think you could get some reaction in there too, a little.
Okay.
Huh? You could have fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See, that's much better with you in the shot,
Yeah,
right?
definitely, yeah.
Okay? This doesn't make too much sense.
No, yeah. Can't really reach
Yeah.
it, like crank it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
okay.
let's do that. Can I also add that while we're doing this photo shoot, we are making discoveries about the show,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
We're playing and possibilities of what action can happen.
Yeah.
So, not to save the photo shoots for the end necessarily, but to play with recording and seeing what happens while you're in process. And this is feeding your process ideally.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Let me just take a couple of pose shots here, if you don't mind. Tilt the head down a little, focus is high, just take it. Yeah. There you go. Both hands up and just take a few poses for me and I'll snap it to you. Right there, hold, just adjusting here. And maybe with the other, both hands up, yeah. That's it. Head down, that's it, right there. Maybe turn the head up, maybe just a little. Or, yeah, maybe not so high. Take the focus, that's it. Very nice. And another pose, one more. And take your head down a little, so that's it right there. One more. Beautiful. And take his puppet focus up. Just take the puppet focus up high. A little higher. Okay, everybody relax. Take a look at this.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Here. Okay.
Do you have any final words of wisdom for your adoring fans, Richard?
I just that the work is so inspiring. The quality of the work here, other than beyond.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you, Matt.
Richard.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Matt Sorensen, for shooting that. Really great. So,
So we're going to look at some of the photos that actually came from that session yesterday. Let me just
Switching computers.
here. Okay,
Here we are.
let's go up all the way to the. Ooh, sorry. There. Okay. I think that's the first shot, right? And then I hit this. Okay. Now these photos I've cropped and I've adjusted the exposure some. Okay? So we'll just go through and look at them. This is the last segment that we were looking at.
And then you can see how Sadie's, your notes with.
Right, opening
how
up
that
to the
changed
camera.
with
And I have to tell you, just like in printing and dodging burning, I could have had more light on her face, but I was able to open that up in post in editing. So I opened up her face as well, and I darkened the cat a little. So there's certain things that digitally you can do in Photoshop that will make significant changes in the exposure.
In these photos, could you sort of say
Yeah.
what sort of interests you in the different shots you made, or what looks good, or what could be improved?
Well,
or why it looks good?
To me, the engagement of the performers,
Yeah.
puppeteers.
Yeah.
There's levels to the puppet is the focus,
Yeah.
but you have that second level in puppetry, oftentimes, especially today, where puppeteers are exposed in the performance. That's a whole amplification of what the action is.
Yeah.
So certainly the gesture here, it adds a whole nother level to the experience.
Like, to be pretentious, like,
Yes.
I look and and Mel's looking down, sort of like there's an angle there with
Yes.
the cat.
Yeah, yeah.
And Sadie's she's not really looking up, but there's a whole diagonal movement there. Is
Right.
that just me kind of bullshitting, or
No,
is
no,
that like,
it
something-
happened, it was there, and,
Yeah.
you know, the cat, where's the cat looking? Cat is connecting with the viewer, which is, you know, if you're really looking for that detail, there's a whole energy to the
Yeah.
image.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's look at another one. So there you can see the difference there, without that performer being opened up. One thing that I would add, I mean, I look at things, I would like to see that her feet, I wish that her feet were more evident, that those are her legs. And you know, it would be nice if she had lighter socks on, so that we saw that was, or that we saw her legs more in the profile of the shadow. I think would add to the photo. Yes, this was.
This is Amy Liu's show with Mel Carter and Harley Walker.
And I love this photo. This is, you know, I love the layers of it and the multi-directional. And I think it's really, it's very strong. And also lighting, how sculptural, the lighting is not flat. If you look at the light on their faces and on the side of the puppet, I think that adds a dimension and depth to it. In photography, we're dealing with height and width, and we want to get in performance, in live theater, we have that depth, and with lighting, we add that dimension. And we see that in the photo and how that adds to the whole reality of the picture. Okay?
And this is the City That Slept, Tom Tooks MFA production.
Right. Here, just in a simple hand, the sense of movement and gesture, very important. And it has a sense of a life to it. Going up the stairs.
Like that's very close-up shot,
Yeah.
and some of the others are far away. When you're looking at a theater
Right.
set with puppets, are you thinking, oh, this one I should be close, or
Yeah.
I want to be over here at this angle? what is that process like?
Yeah, you're seeing what's happening on the various screens and where the action is, where, and in terms of this, digitally you're taking a number of photos, but I'm trying to get the gesture of the movement and where the essence and where it's clean. And this is, she's about to take the next step. There's a sense of life to this. And I think capturing that in a still image, that's when the puppet is alive, when you have that sense of gesture and movement. So that's what ultimately you're looking for. And here I love how this just, the triplicate of that, I think is very, very interesting. The rhythm of that.
For that
Yeah.
previous image,
Yeah.
I've seen a press photo that Harley has of pretty much this scene where the lighting's very different. I think it's frontal. So did you adjust the lighting for that?
Well, they were lighting it,
They were
so
lighting
it, and I think that this is where dimensional, having that strong side light, and it
Yeah.
doesn't interfere with the shadow, the
Okay.
integrity of the shadow.
Yeah.
It's a really wonderful balance. It's very dimensional, and this is very 2D here, so
Yeah.
it's a wonderful mix of that, I think, and her focus.
Yeah.
And here we were playing with the movement of the bird in terms of getting it to read as a bird and the action of it. And this here. And having her, I know this is a small detail, but even just having her overlap with the cloud. You know, I had her move just a little, so it's connecting, that it's not isolated, but it's relating. It's a unit, it's together. Same here, the corner of her shoulder, overlapping with the window.
And this is Rahul Kunatharas,
Yeah.
Topabakutu show with Hema, who's Rahul's wife.
And here we were playing very much with balanced symmetry and yet keeping a sense of gesture and action, which was, because they were starting to rehearse and then I was seeing what, you know, they were playing, rehearsing, I was able to see what the quality of the movement, and this is a historical, traditional, so you want to keep the integrity of the work, and yet we want to create movement and life and engaging imagery. And that's what we were playing with this. So characters relating gesturally, the movement, the angle hopefully has a sense of animation about it. Same here. You know, that tension, and this is small detail, and maybe I'm reading a lot into it, but it's about to touch. There's that tension of that little gesture of touching the animal, the deer, and not quite touching. It's just about to happen. Little detail. And this here, this was, you know, the angle of this here, of this cart, taking it up. It's not just square, it has an energy about it. And the relationship of this to the tree, to the bird, to the, you know, we played with all of that positioning. And here from the back. And here I tried, they were against the screen. I said, come away, let's read some of the shadow, even from the back. Let's see the quality of the shadow of your puppets against the screen. So let's take them at a distance and get that layering that happens. And the light here, I said, bring in the light from the side here. Let's have that accent there. So we're not just in a black void. And here we played with placement. All of these, I know it looks random, but all of this, here things didn't touch, but they filled the frame and related to each other. Same here.
Sadie Aiken.
And here her face could have been, you know, here it's nice that she's profiled, and her face could have been opened up a little more towards the camera here, ideally. This is another. And here the puppets are connecting with the viewer, and the puppeteer's focus goes to the puppets. So you're leading the eye of the viewer, just like in a show. Let's see, sorry. Here with movement, this is, and here with the movement, the camera, the frame is angled. It's not just square and level. There's an angle to it, so it adds to that sense of movement of the whole unit, which is nice. And this is not the rectangle. You can see I cropped it a little tighter. It's enough to give what's on the bottom, enough information of what's on the bottom of the frame, the chairs there. This is a little more static. And here we are again with, are we back at the beginning? Yeah, I think we are. Okay. Great.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you for all your work with Yukon Puppeteers. That's
My
really
pleasure,
great.
my pleasure.
Before we get further deeper
Yep.
in our look at puppetry and photography, a question I have is like, what's the difference between photographing people and photographing puppets?
Oh, well, the important thing I think to keep in mind here is that and the same principles of puppetry is that we have inanimate objects that we are imbuing with life. And how do we do that is through sound and movement. And with still photography, we don't have sound, we have gesture, we have movement. We can give the impression or the quality of sound in the photo, that there can be that sense that sound is happening. So to keep that in mind, also the dimension where it comes, the puppet is the object, it comes to life through movement. So in order to have a photo that puppet has a sense of movement, is there has to be a sense of gesture and movement, capturing movement in the photo. And also the dimension, lighting, and I'll show you some images, but how do we give dimension to, a two-dimensional, we can put some side light so that there's some framing happening around, some glow around it, so that it has dimension to the object, to the puppet. So that adds to that sense of three-dimension, the sense of gesture, of movement, and also the puppet comes to life through sound, and having a sense that the puppet, that there is sound being created, that there is, that we're catching the puppet or the puppeteers, that there's a quality of sound in the image.
How does that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But that's very interesting what you're saying, but how do you see that working? Is there an example of how you feel sound comes across?
Well, should we look at some puppet?
That's a good idea.
Okay, let's look at some images here. Let me go to another folder here. Let's see if this is the right one. So I'm going to show you some images, and we'll just get and I'm not going to describe them all, but these are some images, and just let's look at some and then we can talk. But here is definitely a sense of movement, right?
Okay.
And an outdoor, this is Amy Trumpeter at the O'Neill at the National Puppetry Conference.
Would you say like Jane Henson's arm there, is
Yes.
that giving you a sense of movement?
Yes, of gesture, of movement, of giving action, right? And focus.
And actually the puppeteer here, the way they're leaning
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
is it about angles
Yes.
and?
Definitely.
Excuse me.
Here, look at these puppeteers. This is Pam and Kathy Mullen and Marty at the first O'Neill. But you can see the energy there. These characters are focused. I love this photo. This is Jim Rose at the O'Neill. But this is in the workshop. But just the exchange where the puppet is focused on Jim looking up as he's working on the puppet control. I love this, that there's that simple just glancing up is so alive and so real, and what's the heart is there. right? So the symbol also encapsulates the whole gesture and the exchange between puppet creator and the puppet. This is, I included this, and I'm not certain the credit on this. This is at the O'Neill, but this is shooting during a performance or rehearsal and catching the action. It's an image that there's movement and catching it just at the right, and I love this because it frames the performers. There's actual movement in the image, and the other thing is everyone's focus. It's they're all the puppeteers. For me, it's the puppet and then the layer of the puppeteers and how they give focus, give life to the objects. And I love this this composition.
And for me, the movement there is like the two women are holding that square piece of plastic, and you realize it's at the apogee of this arc, and it's about to start coming back down. I mean, the movement comes across that way. Plus, there's this beautiful symmetry of the framing with the...
Yeah, and the framing of the two puppeteers that are... Now, how could this be a little better? The focus, maybe the eyes on that puppet in the paper puppet in the center could have, that would add a little more.
When you look at that photo, you're thinking like, oh, the photo's been better? Is it that kind of thing? Or
Well, yeah, the puppet could have had more focus.
Yeah.
That he could have
the
had.
puppet could have-
Not the perfect, everyone else's focus is perfect, but that puppet, what happens is it's giving focus, and where you want, ultimately the eye ends up of the viewer is on the puppet. And that's where you want the final bang, like, wow, there's the possibility.
So given the fact that that the pictures of puppets and puppeteers are always, it's more than just one subject, maybe not, but it seems like there's a sequence of action, like you look at the puppeteer and then you look at where they're looking, and then like you were, then maybe you
Yeah,
look
the
at
eye moves
eyes.
within the picture, and it's
So the eye moves
discovery
within the
possibly,
picture.
in the
Okay.
best,
Interesting.
that there's so much happening,
Yeah.
especially in theater, I think. This is a wonderful, I just love, and maybe, I'm just gonna be critical here, there's, we see the light source down here, but the photo is really right here, right? If you wanted to crop it. But this adds a little technical information maybe, but that's where it's all happening, it's right there, right?
Gavin Cummins, who's
Right,
the Newtown puppet
right.
artist, correct?
I included this photo here, and there's 3 photos here, just to give a little bit about dimension in photography. This is a tango piece that I did, and there were 3 performers, and it was a love triangle, and so I had this photo here, and then I want to just show you lighting to give dimension. These are very much 3-dimensional, but in terms of considering key light is your main light, and this is a very bad resolution. I got this off the web. But if your camera's here, your main light, your strongest light is your key light. This fills the subject out, but the back top light or side light can be the strongest and gives you the 3rd dimension of the figure. So here, I'm going to show you, this is with key light, back top light, and some fill front light. And you see how dimensional that is now from the first photo I showed you of them, right? The other thing that's interesting is this has a sense of gesture and movement, very symmetrical. This is a photo setup that I did. So this is on stands, and it's not performance. But I just want to show you this for lighting, and to consider that when you're lighting your puppet theater pieces, as well as doing a photo shoot. How important the dimension of the 3-dimensionality of our puppets is very important in terms of their life and how they're viewed. Okay? This is another Gavin Cummins, and I love this because it's so unique. The human is there, but he is just the backdrop. But his human form is there. This is Jim Napolitano, a UConn graduate at the O'Neill, showing his shadow puppetry. This is Marcin what is it?
DeLillis.
DeLillis, excuse me. And this was shot at the O'Neill and then made into a poster. But you can see it was a murder mystery piece and how dramatic, and just a single light source. Essence, you know, this was a construction, this is at the O'Neill, but I love the juxtaposition of the miniature, of the puppet, and the human hand. I think it's a wonderful. This is a nice shot, and this is, let me look this up here, I'm sorry that, excuse me, this is Jessica Simon, and this is called Ruby and Charlie. And I love this because of the focus is on the puppets, but the puppeteers, it's such an ensemble in terms of the look. And all of the puppeteers, they're in costume, and at the same time, the focus goes to the puppets here.
And the photo and those two puppets are out in the gallery right out here if you want to take a look.
This is another photo that I love, and this is, let me go here, I have some notes here, I'm sorry, there's so many here. But this is Broderick Jones and Michelle Finston, and this is called Romantic Interlude. It was done in 2015 at the O'Neill with Hugo and Inez. Were in residence. And I love, again, layering in a photo between the puppeteers and the puppets. And to me, this is a beautiful example of something happening with the puppets, but what's really happening up behind them with the puppeteers, simultaneous, and that tension, and that can exist simultaneously. I think it makes for a very rich, not only in performance, but viewing this photo. Another example, this is Marty Robinson, and who we have here, I'm sorry, is Leah Agawa. And just his expression and with the puppet and how rich that is. Philip Huber with his Perot. And here I did some Photoshop. What's the essence of this photo? Is the marionette and his hands. And he was in black, and I took him out. Right? It's the floating hands, puppeteering the marionette. That's the essence of this and the magic of it. Stop me if you have any questions, by the way. If anything comes up that you see anything that you're... Another... This is Stop Shear, yes. And this was recently at the O'Neill.
What's the focus effect there? What's the...
That's the back. It was done in the workshop barn at the O'Neill. And it was just like him holding the puppet up, and a very random moment. But it was like, it's not something I preconceived. It was just, oh, let me get your character, and then it's like, wow, what do I have here, right?
With this, like, did you shoot like 10 photos in sequence of stopping this puppet, and this was the one, or was it like, this is what I want?
I think he did this, and I was photographing, let me get you with your puppet. He took it up, and it wasn't something that was planned.
Got it.
I would also say, digitally, I shoot thousands and thousands of photos, and I want to say that that's one of the wonderful things about digital photography, is that the freedom that it provides you. And and I can show you a program of how I download all my cards, and then I have a program called Photo Mechanic, and I choose my best, I mark those, and I put them into a best picks folder, and then I have that best picks folder, and from there I decide which ones of my best picks am I ultimately going to work on. So it's a selection process of narrowing and seeing the photos, stepping away from them, coming back, rediscovering them, and then starting to work on them. And then when I've edited them, even going further, which ones do I really want to see? So.
When you're working with the New York Times, for example, and shooting a show, is there, is there a different timeline? Like, do you go to a show on like Thursday evening and you need to turn in a photograph by Friday morning, something like that?
Yeah, I have a job, for example, a quartet that's gonna be at Carnegie Hall. Friday night, I have to photograph, and they want it first thing Saturday morning. Whereas for the times I shot 2 Broadway shows recently, and that was their last dress rehearsal before they preview. So there's much more, so I spent, literally, I'm shooting many more shots, and I spent the weekend, I didn't get it in till, I shot it on a Thursday night, I didn't get it in until, say, Sunday night. But everything for the times, every actor has to be labeled, left to right. So you've got a cast of, in that case, it was 15, and doing the IDs and making sure they're accurate is very much a part of the process.
When you have that quick turnaround,
Right.
does that affect how you shoot or how you edit or how you choose? Is it like, I gotta get this done tonight, so I'm gonna take fewer photos, or you're
No, you're never,
approaching it
I
differently?
never think in terms of taking fewer photos. It's about, you know, when I come home at night, and I shoot generally 90% of the time at night, I come home, I've already had, I can show you the program at some point, it's called Photo Mechanic. I have the caption, the general caption of the title, the location, the theater, you know, all of that is already written up. I've already typed that up. So as soon as I come home, I put the first card in, and the metadata goes into every photo as it's downloading of that information about the photo, about what that photo is. And then I do the selection process. Then once I've done the editing in Photoshop finally, the last thing I do, if I need to ID the artist, that's what I do, is the last thing I need to do. So, okay, let's go here. Am I taking, this is Peter and Wendy by Nabu Mines. Another, and I like this because the depth of this, and this was a setup. I shot the rehearsal, and I had the luxury, and this was from a Henson Festival that was shot at the Public Theater, one of my favorite shows. Karen Kendall did the entire narration, and it took place in the, you can see the ironing board was the gangplank, took place in the nursery.
And the puppets are in the exhibition right now here.
Now, I'm including this. This is Basil Twist with his stick man. And this I photographed at a reception on Central Park South. This is maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And he was rehearsing before the guests got there for the reception. And I photographed this, and I love this photo. But this is the essence of the photo, I think. This is where it works, right? This is the why, which is why the expanse of Central Park and the skyline. But this is the magic, this is where the essence, I think this is where this photo works. And the tension of that arm catching the building. I mean, just about, again, not making contact, but just there about to touch. Now, 99% of my photos with puppeteers is I want that eye contact between the puppet and the puppeteer. But what's the magic of this photo is that it is doing it behind his back, that there's this independence, right? That this autonomy of the character that I think gives it a life of its own, that I think is magical.
I think also like the movement, like that puppet suspended by the centrifugal force that Basil's using.
Yeah.
Like in a way similar to that plastic sheet of plastic that
Right.
you said it's apogee.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know that's about to be in a different place,
Right.
that puppet.
Right. And then it ended up here, so there's,
Yeah.
there. Okay. This I wanted to include, just to make the point about eye focus. The puppet comes alive by being able to see. That illusion of the puppet seeing, and that's how we believe in its life. Not only by the sound and its movement, but by its focus. And I just discovered this, I took this a few years ago, and I thought, oh, that puppet is looking at me. Here he is being painted as an object, but where is he looking? And what's his expression? And to me, that just, and the other thing I would say is this photo needs to be cropped, right? where's the dead space on this photo? Where's the essence of the photo, right? All of that, I want to see the character there, but from the calendar over, that should go. From the top, this is the essence of what's happening in that photo, okay? This is one of my favorite photos of Carol Spinney and Big Bird. And this happened, he was in San Francisco, we were at a festival, and he did a workshop, he came out as the character, and then he went off stage and outside, and I followed him, and I said, let's get a shot of the two of you together. And with the t-shirt and the whole, and the puppet, oftentimes when I'm shooting Puppet Sesame Street, they're looking at the camera. I have Muppet eyes, getting their focus is really important. And I love that it's really Carol that's looking at me, and the puppet, it's all about everything going to Carol. So I think that makes it very special. So focus is paramount in photography of puppets. Now this is done with Photoshop. There were two lines that what's his name here? I'm sorry.
Bill Irwin.
Bill Irwin, I'm sorry. Yes, Bill Irwin. So this was taken out. So that the magic of that. And maybe Elmo, I'm just being critical, maybe his focus, it's very real where it is, but maybe his arm could be up a little, I'm not certain, or his focus, he could be looking at the camera too. But it works, I think, very nicely. I like it. It has a lot of movement. This is another, and this was photoshopped in. So I shot Elmo separate, and then this was put together. I'm just showing you various things, but this is being on the set and seeing possibilities of how things are juxtaposed and how they're being shot. And I sort of like this because how it's framed in the process of them. This is Podell, the Termine, one of my favorite shows, but very selective lighting here. In terms of what the light, and each of those characters has their own light, and very evocative. Another one, this is Z. Briggs, a favorite shot of mine, the simplicity of it. What is this called here? I'm sorry. I will find it eventually. But anyway, it's another favorite shot of mine. This here, action.
Yeah.
And this is her husband up there, Chad.
Oh,
Yeah. And this was for Wawa. I shoot, yeah, Wawa Jean, and I shoot a lot of dance. I love capturing movement, and this was definitely, him flying.
I wondered if
Yeah.
in a minute we
Yes.
want to shift into your talking about how you got to where you are.
Okay.
But I don't want. I'm
No, this is
interrupting you.
good.
I'm sorry.
No,
Here's
no.
Tom Lee with the
Yeah.
dragons.
But movement is really, here, let me just switch out of this here. How can I do this here? Let's see, escape. So I'll go here. I'm going to just talk about anyone have any questions at this point? Is there any?
Richard,
Yeah.
you mentioned the O'Neill a couple dozen times. What's that?
Okay. So in 1990, Jane Henson, there was a transition happening. Bart was coming up here to UConn. He had his institute at the professional puppetry at the O'Neill, that program, and because he was coming up here to direct the program here, there was going to be an open sort of programming question at the O'Neill, and Jane Henson set up an endowment called the Rose Endowment for Puppetry in honor of Margot Rufus Rose, who are connected with the O'Neill since its beginning. And so we had a sort of a group gathering, and we decided to start a conference in the tradition of the O'Neill. A lot of new work is developed there, and so we decided we would create a conference there in 1990 of the National Puppetry Conference. Developing new work was sort of our spine, that we decided to take on. And so George Latshaw was the director the first year, and I was his assistant. And we did what Jane had us do the first year was just to get it started. We did a Muppet puppet video workshop, and I have a picture here. Let me see. Let me go to the picture here because I have some O'Neill pictures. I'm going to jump ahead here. Let me just, and I'll go to. Let me find this. Should I go through this very quickly? Let me go through. Oh, sorry. I'll come back to these. This is the O'Neill. So this is, we saw this shot already. But the first year, Jane said, let's do puppet video workshop. That will be a great start to it. It's not developing new work, but we will certainly we don't have much time to develop this. Let's do something we've done. So we did that, and here she is teaching as part of that. This is Peter Lintz, who now does Ernie on Sesame Street, and Tim Lagasse, another wonderful puppeteer. UConn grad. And this is, so the workshop was led that year by Marty Robinson, Kathy Mullen of Muppets, and Pam Arciero. This is a group, not from the first year. Yes, it was from the first year. So and Bart is right here. You see Bart back there, and Paul Vincent Davis, and there's a Jim Rose, and Kathy Mullen, and Pam. Marty's up and back. So you can see, and these are all puppets they created there. And this is in the workshop with Jim Rose, who for a number of years led the marionette workshop there. And then these are some photos that were taken there. So this was Ronnie Burkett's, let me see here, I want to get the right, what was this called? I'm sorry, here, let me just get it right. Here it is. Jim Rose, here we are. Oh my goodness, I'll come back to this. But anyway, this was taken at this is Bernd Ogrodnik. He's taught here as well. And so these are some of my favorites. This is a production I did of Caruso that was part of the Henson Festival Cabaret. We saw that already. We've seen this. The second year, so the second year, we were going to take on the model of the O'Neill and create new works. And George Latshaw, who was part of it, and I took over as director. We both did projects, and I did a production of Diary of a Madman. And what we did was we did everything in newspaper and workshopped it that way. So there weren't complete puppets. So this was my production of Diary of a Madman the first year. And here it is. This is with Greg Rui and Daniel Tamulonis, was the puppeteer, main puppeteer, and he's a UConn graduate. And then eventually I built the production, and we did the whole production. And this is what it looked like ultimately. And I must add, it won an Unum Award, so I'm very proud of that. Yeah. But this is Diary of a Madman. Another production I did there was this Chairman. This is who do we have? Ron
Binion.
Ron Binion, and and this is with Chairman here, portrait. Another production I did was with Pam and Mark Petrosino, and these were painted again with torsos, and they painted each other. They had real paint, and it became a painting war of painting each other and ultimately paint on their own faces of the puppeteers. This is Dave Regan and a cooking piece. You saw that already. Here. This is Anna
Crutchton.
Yes, and I love this photo. Just ones that I love seeing the puppeteer, and then we saw that, this here. These are all okay.
I wonder if we could go back. You were one of Frank Ballard's students here at UConn.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit about your work as a student at UConn.
Okay.
And then I didn't mention at the beginning that your trajectory after you graduated involved working with Jim Henson Company and the Muppets, and then getting into photography. It wasn't
Right,
something you
right.
started out doing. So
Right.
I wondered if that's something you would want
Yeah,
to.
these are my, so I'm gonna go back here, there's gonna be a little overlap, but let me see here. So, this is indulging me a little, but this is my story here, I'll be very quick. Okay, so here goes. Okay. So as many of us started when we were very young, right? With puppets, and this is when I was maybe nine years old. My first puppets, an Pelham puppet and the cardboard theater, all of that. And then when I was, so I was doing puppets, and I'll tell this story quickly, but I was in elementary school, and a production came through of an opera production, marionettes of Rigoletto. And that was, although I was dabbling in puppets and playing in puppets, that was my aha moment, and I was very much like, oh my, I was moved by it in so many ways. I went to the library, I got books, and I started building my own puppets, my own marionettes and all. And so that was an amazing, and it continued. In workshop when I was in junior high school, we had to build something. I built a wooden marionette and this sort of thing. And by my junior year, through my mother, who was secretary of the elementary school I had gone to, she met one of Ballard's first students, Carol Thompson, who lives in Connecticut here, but she met someone who, Carol, through someone who had come to UConn and studied puppetry. So it was the spring of 1970, Ballard was doing Love for Three Oranges, and I came up and met him and saw a rehearsal, and then I came back and saw the production that spring, and it was the spring of the Vietnam War in Kent State. And so by the end of they performed the production, but by the end of that semester, the college, the universities closed down. This is the spring of 1970, and then that summer was the National Puppetry Festival here on campus with Carol Spinney and Frank and Jim and Frank Ballard, the artistic director of the festival. And I came to that festival, and because the students all didn't come back, Ballard invited me to puppeteer. So here I was, a junior in high school, and it was quite an amazing experience. So here I am with Frank outside the museum years later. Here's the poster for Three Oranges, which was an amazing production. And this was my first puppet picture of Jim Henson and Carol Spinney at that festival. So this is a sentimental, little did I know the Henson family and what an effect and would have on my life and career. This here is, just want to introduce, is myself with Jan Rosenthal, who was a student here. We met here. Jennifer Johnson, who was one of Ballard's early students and did a lot with overhead puppetry, and Kate Schmidt, she was a graduate student here. But you see the production posters on the back wall. And this was just down the street here. This is where Janet Beth and her family home. This is Christian, my marionette that I made, and it's out there my senior year and used for my audition piece. Brad Williams, a brilliant puppeteer and artist who was in graduate school with Bart and myself. And this is Brad doing his MFA in the courtyard here called Laughing Stock. You were in it, Bart? And I think he was covering for someone here. Or was he part of this, that he would do the voice in the?
There were all sorts of events in this.
Okay, that were part of this. But there's all puppeteers here. My MFA was in the Mobius Theater. Bart was in it. So the photography, this was not, we're doing digital. So I'm going to show you some photos that were prior to digital. And I didn't take these, but I want to show you, this was when it was on exhibit, but this was the devil. And Brad Williams did the poster. He did an art piece for me for my birthday during rehearsal, and then we said, that's the poster. And this was what he created for the poster. So these are a contact sheet here, but this is, guess who this is here? Bart, right? And he also did puppeteering, but and it had doubles, so you had puppets meeting actors that were costumed the same. And at one point, right, we were talking about this the other day, Brad played the devil, Diamortiscon, and behind him, he was hooded, life-sized, and at one point the devil had an inner monologue. The devil turned, Brad took off his red hair, red beard, and he gave the inner monologue for the devil. And it was the most revealing and the most anguished and pained, and then put the hood back on and the performance went on. But it was that kind of theatricality of the characters.
And this uses Jerry Rojo's Mobius performance space,
Right.
In a way that's quite in line with his work with the performance group and others, the environmental
Right.
theater.
And we took the platforms out of the center, so we put 80% of the audience in the center, and the action was around them, and they were on swivel stools, so that the show moved all around. And as I have to say, an amazing experience. Talk about trajectory. I had to do the lighting, I had to do the costumes, the puppets, the staging, everything but sound and the building. So it was all on my, but that's how all of that I was able to take with me to New York. Here you can see a mask on a mask of a puppet. You see? Another production was Little Prince, and Jan, who I went to school with here, we were part of a CETA project, like a Works Progress Administration project in Willimantic, and we did a production after graduating of The Little Prince, and this is her design for the poster. Then I did some teaching in college for a couple of years, and this is a production of David Belasco originally did a one-act of Madame Butterfly that was based on a short story. This is before the opera, and I staged with the students a production of this, Madame Butterfly, and I had a puppet as the child. 20 years later, 30 years later, this is on the Metropolitan Opera stage, and I photographed it. Here it is. This is the Met Opera production, but I did it in the 80s. Anyway.
Did you tell people that the Met? I did this.
No. I'm just happy to be there photographing. This is Jan with a puppet from Kismet. She did this character. Here she is. So she, after undergraduate, we worked at this project together. She eventually, within the year, was in New York working at Muppets, right? And then sent over, did Sesame Street, and very shortly after was at Muppet Show in London, okay? And what happened is in 1980, how are we doing on time? In 1980, there was an international festival in Washington, D.C. Jim Henson was the artistic director, worked with Nancy Staub. And I came down it was a summer, came down that summer of 1980. She came in from London, and I said, Jan, can you get me an interview at Muppets? I think I want to have that professional experience. She called from Washington, D.C. up to New York, got me an interview, and on the way back to Connecticut, I interviewed they were doing a build of a Sesame Street live show for 2 months. I gave up my teaching job, and I built, and here I am in one of the costumes, a seedy bird. So, and Carol Lee, eventually I freelanced at Muppets in different departments, and she tapped me on the shoulder within a year and said, how would you like to join us on Sesame Street? And so that's what I did. I worked in the workshop, and I worked on Sesame Street. And here we are. This is Ed Christie, Cheryl Blaylock, and Gwen, who is from Wesleyan, and here we are in the workshop. So this, I show you this picture. When you're on Sesame Street, you're doing the rigging, preparing the puppets for shooting. And here, this is Mark Zezetek and Stefan Rotondero and Paul here. They're preparing the puppets. You can see a Fat Blue, and these are all on Sesame Street, and there's a rolling box behind. I'm pointing down here, but up there you can see, and that's all the materials. Here I am, there was a show called Little Muppet Monster Show. And there's Jan here, and this is Richard Hunt, Noel McNeil, and Will Morrison, who was the head of the workshop. But we're here, and this we did, I don't know how many episodes, only 3 aired, and it was canceled. But there we are. This is doing the rigging and supporting. And that's a different version of it. And these are some characters I created. This is Placido Flamingo, which was for Richard Hunt. Here he is with Itzhak Perlman. And this is a honker I built, different view. This is a duck I built with
Wynton Marsalis.
Thank you, Wynton Marsalis. Meryl Sheep is another one, another character. This is my business card, Ha, for Henson Associates. That was the name of the company, and that was our logo. I got to do some amazing projects. Here was, we were in Japan with Big Bird in Japan, and this is Brian Neal in Berkeley, and he's walking through at a temple. The other thing I will say is when we were on set, we would document what we built. And Carol Lee Wilcox, who was head of the workshop for and Sesame Street, if we built something, a character or props or something that were special, she would have us go on set for that day for the rigging to follow through in what we built. And we also had a camera there, and we would document what we built, so there was a Bible of record. And at the same time, Jan, who was in London, said, and we would see each other periodically, she bought a camera. She said, "You gotta do this. You would love having a camera and photographing." I emulated her. I looked up to her. I bought a camera. This is when I was teaching with a student. I set up a darkroom. I was playing, and I was really enjoying it. I got to Sesame Street. There's a still photographer. We're documenting, but there's a still photographer, and I'm starting to take pictures. In the workshop, it's starting to, and so this is, I'm on location in Japan. I'm photographing. At the same time, I'm doing the rigging and taking care of the Muppets. We had an amazing still photographer who did studio setups, all the calendars, John Barrett. And I just include this because this is in my apartment. I wanted to do my first still. So I set up all the puppets I had. There's my first marionette, my first Pelham. There's Christian. There's a mask from Dr. Faust. And I did a still. But this just shows you the seeds and playing. Then I started taking photo classes, and Kermit Love, who was created, he built the original Big Bird, and a lot of the Muppets, he was on the floor all the time with Big Bird. I had a class, I had to do a portrait for my photo class, which I'm taking, while I'm working at Muppets. I said, "Can I do your portrait?" I go down to his workshop, we go outside, so this was my first portrait. Then in the summer of 1987, Jim went on to Charlottesville to do a puppet on camera workshop for 3 weeks, and I was invited to go as his assistant. I was there to do the building, but I was also, the photography was taking off for me, and so I was documenting. So these are images I took during this is on Sesame Street, but this is him teaching. And at one point, this is with Brian is behind him, he's teaching the students, international students. At one point he said to me, "I see you with the camera all the time, but I never see the photos." Invitation, right? Okay. So I continued. Cheryl Henson was there. She came to assist. There she is in the workshop with the building. There she is with giving the puppets for, you can see the ping pong eyes. And this is a classic shot I shot in Charlottesville of Jim and Brian. Okay? So the summer of 1988, I'm sort of giving you my trajectory. I got an opportunity to shoot at Williamstown as the theater photographer. So I spent, and this was all on film and slides. We had our own darkroom. This is Christopher Reeve and Madeline Potter in a play. Another one was Diane Wiest, and this was in at Williamstown as well, with Dwight Schultz and Ann Archer. And this was in the Sunday Arts and Leisure here. So this was starting to take off. Then I was invited to do the first turnover of Phantom of the Opera. Okay? And during Timothy Nolan, coming down the staircase during the dress rehearsal, he comes out in costume down, second act, opening of the second act, explosion, he disappears and he goes into a pit. Rehearsal stops, he sprained his ankle. Everything stops. That was the end of that. They had to wait 2 weeks before they could continue on. But here he is. These are some of my shots here. Okay, we've seen this with the O'Neill. But anyway, what ultimately happened was I was dabbling in the photography. It was starting to take off. I was getting clients, and started to shoot for Sesame. I'm on set one day. New York Times photographer Sarah Kruwich comes on set, and I say, "Can you get me an interview with the Times?" And she did, and that's how I started freelancing with the Times, and that was 35 years ago. So it's been an amazing journey.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard.
How are we doing?
We're doing great.
Okay.
I think it's very exciting. I think what we want to do now is have questions from the audience here in the Ballard Institute and maybe also online. If there are
You
questions.
said Carol Thompson was your,
Yes,
I think she might be watching.
when I gave her the link.
Okay,
How wonderful.
She is watching.
I'm giving her my love and my thanks, my eternal thanks.
Yeah.
I mean that.
We have a microphone if there are questions from the audience, and then are there questions from the digital world at this particular
Well,
moment?
you kind of answered one, but maybe you talk a little bit more about it. Someone was asking if your career started with, film that had to be developed or digital, and you kind of hinted at it. But
It did, and I can't, people say, do you miss film? And for the performance photography, you cannot believe the difference in terms of the speeds that you can shoot at, in terms of the resolution of the sensitivity to light. I was shooting at 160 pushed to 320, say, for film, ISO. Now I am at 5,000, 8,000 in terms of the setting for the sensitivity and shooting movement. You cannot, and silent. I can put my camera, I can be at Carnegie Hall and audience is right there, and I put my camera on silence. So there's no, or if I'm within the audience, I shoot sometimes where I'm down in front and I turn off the back of my camera, so there's no image that is being visible and distracting to the audience. So I'm silent and I'm up here and I'm keeping steady. And the other thing I want to add is when you're shooting performance, you are shooting numerous frames. It is all trying to catch action and movement. It is, you'd be surprised how much you need to. And following, that's the other thing is, this is my proscenium, my picture frame, I am composing. And it's a dance. When I'm able to say a dress rehearsal and I'm able to move with the performers, I am dancing with them. I am in partnership, and I am trying to anticipate the moves and to anticipate where the blocking is going. And I can do that. Knowing theater and knowing staging and all, and where I am able to move with it and be up front with it, on top of it. And that's when it's working its best.
I have a question. Do you, as you explained, you have this deep background in puppetry and as a puppeteer for many, many years.
Right.
When you look at photographs of puppet theater, not by you, for example, can you tell when the photographer might not have that understanding of puppets, and what does that look like? Can you say, oh, that person, that's not really a great photograph of puppets because I don't know what. And maybe I'm implying that maybe your sense of puppetry and your sense of theater helps you get at the essence of puppetry. But what are common mistakes that people make if they take a photograph of puppets? It's not so great.
Well, that it's not a lie.
Yeah.
There's not a lie. A sense of gesture, a sense of movement, a sense of focus, all the things that as puppet directors that we are conscious of when we're staging our work. All of those elements you want to incorporate in the still that you're putting into the action of when you're staging your puppetry. And there's different, like Avenue Q is a different Muppet, and we learned here that your focus goes to the puppet, and the audience, if they look at you, it goes into the puppet. That's a general. Avenue Q, for example, was the puppeteers are out here, and the puppet is out here. So you're looking, it's a split focus. So that's another way another way of staging. Does it work ultimately, or does it work for, then Marty's going, no. Does it work for a still photo? I don't think so. I think that it's very important. The puppeteer doesn't always have to look at the puppet. It can be that tension, like with the Basil Twist photo, where his focus is over here and the puppet is doing something over here. So that's, you can play with that. It doesn't always have to be giving to the puppet, but focus is important for the puppet and the puppeteer.
Questions from the audience? Anyone in the audience have a question, comment, brilliant insight? Yes, Matthew Cohen and then Sol.
Could you talk about a particular shoot which you might think about as your most challenging, most difficult shoot, working with puppets, and why it was challenging? And conversely, something which is most pleasurable, and a shoot which is doesn't feel like you have to do anything, perhaps.
Well, I think when, for example, when puppets are in big spaces, and maybe you have to fill that space, and the composition of a picture frame is a bit tighter. So when things are tighter, that also helps you when they're relating and interrelated, and when they're trying to fill a space, it can get, and it won't work for the frame of a picture, that they're not connecting, not overlapping. I think that is problematic, for example, or flat lighting. I mean, there's any numerous possibilities of things that, or where the puppeteer is taking more focus than the puppet, or that, I think that's, or lighting, that the puppet doesn't have the focus in the lighting that he should. And maybe the puppeteer is hotter than and there's certain things you can fix in Photoshop that I can adjust, but there's only so much latitude in that, I think, ultimately. He had a question.
Sol had a question, and then Matt has a question.
I had a question with archiving of your photos, and so because you're talking about kind of moving from folder to folder, this is everything I shot, this is like the best one, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you try to, even if you don't think they're the best of the shoot, try and save those, and like why do you feel it's important to still have such a big collection of
I do narrow it down. So I have a hard drive of all, and I do it by year, by month, but it's all best picks folders, generally. The other thing that I do, this is just an organizational thing, when I started at the Times, and certainly my stuff prior to the film, but I started at the Times in film, and I have to tell you, you asked about the Times. When we started there, it was in film. You would go back to the Times building after the show at night. They had a lab technician processing your film. You would wait there until it was processed, and then they had a machine that you would run the film through, and you would do a little black and white print, and you'd write the caption on just one as a reference photo. And then you'd find another group of actors that was different or overlapping, and you'd write that, and that's how they had that. So you would be there until 2 and 3 in the morning. You were there so late that you were seeing the next day's issue being delivered, and you could see the morning paper at 2 in the morning. But that's when I started. But about 2.5 years later, we converted to digital, and that's when you could go home and email it in. But you had to turn it around at the next day. But what was your question again about? I'm sorry.
Just do you, even if they're not in your best folder, do you save all your photos?
I do. I have over 150 hard drives. It's ridiculous. But I do have, where by year, I put all the best picks folders. And so those are what I really need to keep. The other thing that I did when I started at the Times is I have file folder, sealed file folder that's open, and it has the name of the show, the date, then all the production, location, time, and then invoice number or whatever is on the bottom, but it's all right there. The program goes in, the assignment sheet, and I have it for every job since since 2000 or 1998. something like that. So I have all, and they're all in tote box, the drawers, the same as the Muppet drawers, you know, that I was used to, but I have them all, and I have an office with all of those.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Matt?
Hi.
Hi.
So firstly, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
My comment is less of a question, but getting to observe you during the photo shoot with our grad students, and thank you again for that. That was an incredible opportunity for them. I had never thought about photographers being in the forefront and involved with artistic choices, and when I saw you directing, essentially, you were directing puppet theater, and it was really, really interesting for me because I love directing and I'm a lousy photographer. But you managed to build really beautiful pictures or adjust things that were presented to you, but what I loved the most is that you were also educating the artists and discussing with them and reviewing and kind of explaining your reasoning to them. And I thought that was really incredible and just a wonderful thing to give us. So thank you very much
I
for
had a
that.
great time. And I have to say that my experience here at UConn, that whole, you know, I was very much a director, it informs my work. And it informs and I have to hold back, you know, I can't have that sort of, having that exchange is an ideal. That was really a gift, you know, to be able to do that. But oftentimes I have to take what's there, and then it's creating with what's there, configuring. And the other thing is with the Times, or generally in press, you cannot move anything in the frame. You cannot do that sort of Photoshop. It has to be authentic to what is there. That's off limits. So, but to have all my experience, like I took lighting design, all of that. I did lighting design when I got into the city for a bit. That informs all of my work, you know, ultimately.
Are there questions from Facebook at all?
Just kind words.
Kind words, okay. That's good. Okay.
The other thing I'll add is that, you know, my work here and my studies here informs me, I said, but when I got to the city, you know, you would ask me when I was here in school if I was going to be a photographer, that was not, it's being open to possibilities, and I've said this before, but what's wonderful about this program is the multi-dimensional, cross-cultural, the cross-disciplines, I really want to say, that you, as puppeteers, we have to learn all of the different disciplines of our craft, of the artist, of theater. And that is a gift that will inform the rest of your creative lives. And I really, you know, if you're not comfortable in not lighting, or you're not comfortable in costumes, and I did all of that here to varying degrees of success. And it will serve you, and to apply yourself. I just encourage that, to test yourself and to take as much as you can. And to be open to, you know, if you said I was going to be a photographer when I was here, it's like, what? That was not part of but being open to possibilities. I went to New York, and it was like, people do that and that and that, and doors open, and being available to possibilities is, and you will use, and don't think, oh no, I'm a puppeteer and I've got to hold on to that. It will inform whatever you do creatively. The idea is to be ultimately creative individuals, as you all are, or you wouldn't be here. So I would just say to let that your creative instincts and knowledge blossom. That is my ultimate experience, what I would share, and let that happen in your lives.
Great.
Okay?
Thank
I have
you,
one
Richard.
last question
Oh,
for
good.
you.
Okay.
When can we expect your coffee table book?
Oh,
Really good question.
it is. That has come up, but honestly, I'm still working, I'm still shooting, and I would rather do that.
No, you
But it's possible, but
you give the fans what they want.
Yeah. Someday.
Okay.
Someday. But I'm still working. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all for being here. Thank you those online, we appreciate it. Come to the next event, in person or digitally. Thank you. There's still cookies and juice here, thank you. And I'm sure Richard will be happy to talk with folks now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.